So the first level are like the things that we could actually see that are changes and practices. The other level, which is where a lot of our advocacy and like movement building piece is about relationships. And so we want to, in a lot of the work that I do and Adelaide and you are all part of the system, we are all part of the system, is about bringing the system together. Students, parents, educators, school board leaders, did I say teachers, policymakers, higher ed folks, all the people that are involved in ensuring that arts education happens from the teacher to the person who teaches the teacher, to the school board member who makes funding priorities. We want to bring those folks together and identify challenges and opportunities. And so what I talk about here, the system, it also represents artists who can be advocates, educators, nonprofits, governments, associations. We work with a lot of associations, and associations typically are an organization that represents a special interest group. So there are the California Music Educators Association, and they're specific to music educators. So a lot of that work is like building those relationships and connections so folks can say like, hey, this thing over here isn't really quite working. We need to fix either that's a legislative fix, a bureaucratic fix, or a practice fix. But a lot of our work is being a handshake and being a convener. And that's why that's important. And you are all an incredibly important and the most important advocates in the system. And that's why it's so important to have you in this room and to be connecting you all with these folks as well. The other piece is power dynamics. And this is a little bit fuzzier. This one's really about putting people in place or creating structures so the community has a voice in how policy decisions are made. And so I'm sure some of you have been part of advisory committees at school districts, and there's usually a youth advisory committee, or there's a parent advisory committee, or there's like an LCAP advisory committee. These are opportunities for community members to be in relation to the decision makers and for them to be decision makers as well, because they're developing plans. And so that's the other piece. That's like the relational piece. And then the last piece is like the fuzzier piece of this work, which is mental models, which is our public will work, which is our advocacy messages, our campaigns. We want to ensure that people know arts education is important, why it's important, the state of arts education in California. So the fact that so many students don't have access and there's inequitable access, but also we want folks to know that, hey, when you have arts in your school, culture's better, your outcomes are better, engagement is better, you're being prepared for the creative jobs of tomorrow. So I would say, like, again, mental models is about the shifting of ideas and mindsets. The middle part is about the relationships, and the structural piece is about the laws, the practices, and the money. And then somebody always asks, and which one's more important? They're all important. All of them need to be happening at one point, at once. Doesn't necessarily need to be one organization. You know, our lane is advocacy, legislation, policy. We facilitate research, we create resources, but it's all in that advocacy vein. We're not going to be developing teacher preparation programs. That's just not our wheelhouse. But we're going to be talking to those folks and convening those folks to identify challenges and practices that we're seeing are helpful in the field. And so that's the big thing. And I'm going to pause there. I don't know if there's any questions, but always happy to take questions and always happy to nerd out on this with you all. And there is a paper, if you really want to get deep on this, it's called the system. Oh wait, oh man, I forgot it. It's quoted somewhere like the next one. Let's see, next slide. Maybe I have the name right here. Yeah, ask questions. So these are the actual definitions, which I just totally went over. We could go to the next one. I wanted to bring this up. Oh, it's called it left me again. I'll come back. I'll come back. The name of the paper, I will link it to you all. It's a 5-page paper. It's awesome. It's
And
really, really great. It's a great framework.
if you
So
go back
collective,
to the triangle wave, I wanted to say something about that.
oh, go for it, dude. Yeah, for sure.
So So just so everyone knows, I mean, this is kind of set up like steps, right? But in reality, and we can talk about it, I love your questions, is these start to blend together and this triangle starts to actually move like in a circle. And so all these things are actually what makes I think a lot of our advocacy so interesting, engaging, and every day is different. We'll talk about that. It's these things start to really work together.
Yeah.
So this isn't like life, it's complicated, right? And so these things, they don't happen so cleanly. They start to flow into one another. They start to feed off one another.
Yeah.
These are all living, breathing triangles. And we all play a role in each and every one of these pieces here.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say a good example would be we need to convince sometimes certain legislators that arts education is a priority. We need to shift their perspectives and give them cases and stories and messages in order for laws to be passed. And so that would be a relationship between shifting of mental models and changing policy. But then we need our advocates to carry that message, to amplify that message, and we need to help and facilitate relationships in order for that message to be carried to the legislator, in order for that legislator then to want to pass that policy. So yeah, this is a nice clean triangle. It's definitely not that like that in reality. So next one,
Well,
and the next one.
I'm
Yeah,
just
go for it.
curious for the SVL and YAC and the meetings, like where you see yourself in that. Sorry, Chantal, we're like, go back, go forward, go back. Can you go back to the triangle? Like where you see y'all's work fit into this space, or where you would like to see your work fit into this space.
Waiting for someone else to go, but if not, you're asking where do we want our work to fit in?
Yeah, like where do you see yourself currently, or where would you like to be operating in this?
All right. Well, I feel like currently it's a little bit unreasonable to aim for structural change, at least in a direct way. But I'd like to at some point influence that. I mean, I have some experience in local politics, and I don't know if I want to go into government, but I think if I did, the policy and resource flow boxes would be my most preferred.
Yeah. And Benicio, I see you here in structural change. And Rohan, I just want to take a beat because you are working with an elected official, right? Or,
Yes,
so, whether you think about your work directly impacting that, like you do have the power to at least get your voice heard with that elected official who is going to be connected to those structural change, right? So oftentimes we think we have to be that person or have to be in that space, but there are other ways to connect to that work that isn't, I'm the one signing this into law.
for sure.
Cool. Eva.
I mean, definitely like Miss Romo said and Miss Forrest said, like we're all like all these triangles like connect and all are a part of one, but maybe on a different perspective than Rohan, that I definitely see us in the structural change. Caitlin, like you said too, like we're definitely working with our leaders, and in that way, like we're leaders ourselves, which is definitely like in the relational change too, like the power with the power dynamics, even though we're students, our voices are the most powerful voices in the room, even though we're not the elected officials. And of course, we're all advocates here. So I think, I see myself in all of these triangles, which is really awesome. And thank you for providing this
Of
visual.
course.
Awesome. Benicio, I know you're in the car, so don't feel like you need to speak out, but did you want to add anything to yours, or we can also just leave it there?
I don't know if my mic is good because I got my AirPods on.
Yeah, sounds fine.
But I guess just like making changes in the system, like the structure, I guess, would be like more influential, I think. But other people say good things about it too.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
And
Ma'am.
this is from I got the name FSG's The Water of Systems Change. Literally 5-page document that they have whole conferences around that I've been a part of.
Thank
So
you.
let's I'm gonna speed a little bit. Let's go forward. to the collective impact, I just because that's another like the next one. So this is another one of those things of like what is collective impact, and people use it in different ways and it means different things, and then just like a partnership. It's just another framework of working together. And the way I use it is thinking about working together with the system. And so we have a pretty broad coalition. I mean, they're all arts and arts ed related folks, but we just had a conversation yesterday around the teacher pipeline and what is qualified teachers and what does that mean to properly prepare teachers. And even within our coalition, you have nonprofit arts providers and we have educators. And so we are always trying to find a common agenda because even there's disagreements, and we're always trying to see what are the things that we can measure together to see that we're actually progressing. And our role here, and I'm just kind of going, is like the backbone organization. A lot of the work that we all do, Caitlin, myself, Chantel, Adelaide, is being a backbone of folks. And that means setting up meetings, setting up agendas, getting people together, making sure that people are talking to each other. And that is a big part of our work. And that is the backbone role. And then we want to identify activities that we all agree on, like, hey, you want to work on that, you want to work on that, let's work on it together. And that's like the big thing. And then communication, the importance. And so we try to approach a lot of our work with collective impact, bringing California Department of Ed together with the California Arts Council and all these different associations, and finding common ground and common things that we could work together. So I know I've been talking a lot. Let's go to the next one. See. Okay, so here's just so the water assistance James is I saw the link there. Transforming a system is really about transforming the relationships between people who make up that system. At the end of the day, bureaucracies are people, and we want to ensure that bureaucracies and the people within them are aware of what's happening in the field, are aware of the impact of certain policies or lack thereof of policies. And again, that's why I highlight the importance of you all in this work, because you are living this, you are the most impacted by this, you have the experience and the lived experience to share of like, what does it look like right now not to have arts education, or what does it look like to have a robust arts education? And then you understand and you're able to convey the power of that to make the case. Next slide, please. All right, Nick, we could handle this super fast. I'm looking at time, and I'm sure all of you have a great understanding of the ledge process. And if not, we're going to go over it right away. And if not, Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law, is the best summary of the legislative process there is out there. So I would even like, you know, if you need a quick refresher, but we're just going to go over this. And Nick, anything that comes up, let's try to do this together. So 3 branches of government, ledge makes the law, so that's Congress. There's an equivalent here in California. This is the federal, the Senate, and we call it the Assembly here in California. The executive carries out the law, so these are the actual departments. So the California Department of Ed is part of the executive branch, and the governor here in California is the executive who oversees those departments. And then the judiciary interprets the laws. Basically, they're the referee, make sure that the laws conform to the Constitution and don't violate people's rights. Nick, anything? I mean, that's a quick summary, right?
Yeah, these are the smart kids in the room. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
just
know.
add here. I'll just add here that this is like, you know, it's a separation of powers. You know, the legislature does this and the governor does that and the courts do another thing. Again, in reality, all of these branches are influencing one another, and we'll talk about it. It talks about systems change and lobbyists, what they do. We're trying to get each of these branches to influence one another and to do things we want them to do. So whether it's something in the court or the governor or legislature, this is a fluid, real system of how laws and society is made up.
And we could go to any of these and have very specific advocacy strategies, because litigation and lawsuits are also a way to make change. And that those are like big multi-year things, but there are a lot of really important settlements that have fundamentally changed education because of of the judicial branch and judicial activism, not activism, like lawsuits. And there's a certain word that I'm missing right now, Nick, what that's called. Next slide. Oh, this was just like, so how does a law become a bill? The first thing is it's an idea. Yeah, perfect. Yes, that's the one I was thinking about. Perfect. Thank you, Deja. And so first step is there's an idea for a law. Either a legislator hears from constituents like, hey, you need to fix this, or this needs to happen, or there's a research or there's some report, but laws start with an idea or some sort of advocacy or some sort of awareness of a problem. Next slide.
AP US history, exactly. And so I'll just add here that you all just really impressed by this group because one thing I want to demystify about ideas and laws and this whole process is that those ideas can literally come from anywhere and they do not need to be perfect at the start. So whatever seed you're planting does not need to be the most perfect seed. And so really when we're thinking about systems changes, what exactly is the goal? We have a strong goal in mind, a righteous cause. We start to plant seeds and see what comes. But those ideas do not need to be perfect from the jump. You see here, I think the best thing to say about this is it's a long process and it's very iterative, right? There's lots of people are looking at this idea, and in between this big complex, I guess it's a rectangle. There's a lot of people who will engage with you as you go along. So some people who don't like your idea, some people who love your idea, some people who know more and can help you, people who can really understand how the entire systems work. So again, just want to empower you all. If you're thinking about how can I make change, you can make change by planting a small, simple seed of an idea.
Yeah. And yeah, I think all of you all probably have a really good understanding of this process. But I think just the thing that I want to just kind of bring out from this process is the committee process and the fact that there are like certain legislators are in committees that oversee specific topics. And so a lot of the relationships that we try to develop in Sacramento are with the ed folks, the ed committee folks, really trying to build those, and they're the ones that we're talking to, and also identifying champions. So we have somebody like Senator Ben Allen, who we talked to at their office. He's a champion. He has a proven track record of supporting the arts. He introduced the Arts Ed resolution just yesterday, which passed unanimously. And so he's a champion, and I believe he's part of the. Is he still part of the Arts Committee as well, Nick? I don't remember.
Yes.
He's part of the arts committee. So it's also identifying your champions who know and in connecting with those committees. Because those are the folks that are going to help kind of carry things through. And you already know that they're in support of your cause. Next slide. So this is just the federal version. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. I think we're going to share this, but this is the federal version of how a bill becomes a law. I think it's very similar. I don't know what the major differences are. Nick, do you know what the major differences are in terms of just the ledge process?
Just that the individual Congress persons have more power to kind of either push a bill or stop a bill. Here in Sacramento, in California, there's individual legislators have just significant less power. And so Congress is sort of empowered. That's probably why things are so slow, Abe. Congress is really empowered not only both houses to stop the bills that come from the other house, but they've also empowered individual Congress persons to really either and to be honest with this group, they've empowered the congressmen to really have more power to stop bills, right? And so in California, we have a much more robust, transparent process, and also individual legislators have kind of their own bite-sized piece of power, but not as much as in Congress.
Yeah. And I would also say like it's like at the federal level, things are more divided in terms of like the House is always switching. How long has California had a Democratic House? A 2/3 majority for at least 15 years, a decade or something like that?
Yep.
So Democrats rule in California, really easy to get a Democratic governor's agenda, whereas at the federal level, much more divided and a lot more roadblocks. I think the Senate is a really great example of not being very representative of the people and also having that 60 vote majority. But that's a whole other conversation. We'll save some of the politics. Next slide, please. Oh, here we go. Interview. Off to you all.
All right, we can either put some questions in the chat. If you have some really pressing thoughts, you can come off mute. We are welcome to ideas, but we also have some pre-questions we can ask you guys. But I'll give it some time. Anybody?
I'll just say that I'm an open book, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any and all questions I can.
I think I'll go first because this is like a really burning question for me because I'm interested in public relations and I've always wondered how these two areas intertwine and if they're connected at all.
Between public relations and like lobbying, talk about like direct advocacy. Yeah, they're really like twins. Twins who are focused on the same goal, but that have different personalities, right? And so I have, our shop doesn't do public affairs, but I have colleagues that help me with public affairs. And really that piece of that is about messaging. It's about community engagement, really listening and thinking about how people are thinking about an issue, and then using various media outlets or other ways to engage people. What that's a little different is my work is much more focused on that process you guys talked about and on those legislators. And so I'll spend a lot of my day in the halls of the Capitol, not only meeting with the legislators, but meeting with their teams, with the kind of the smart folks I call them, which are all the committee consultants, the experts, and really understanding what is it that they care about, what is it that they want to see. And then I'll go talk to my twins over in the public affairs space and say, hey, these are the type of words that are hitting, these are the types of messaging, these are the types of people they want to hear from. Whether that's BIPOC communities, or they want to hear from farmers, or they want to hear from folks that have small businesses or restaurants. And so that profession goes and does that work, engages restaurants, engages farmers. Then they come back and feed me with what they heard from that community. And then I take that and I walk through the halls of the Capitol. So it's really kind of a yin and yang of the work. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
See a question here. Why is a lobbyist is an activist paid by an interest group to promote their position? Oh, okay, yeah. That's the common definition. Yeah, absolutely. So a lobbyist, yes. I mean, just by definition, this is a profession. We get paid either by an individual interest group. So just by way of introduction, this is my 10th year in Sacramento. I spent a lot of it representing just cities, all 482 of California cities. And I was paid for by an individual association. These all associations and nonprofit groups in Abe's Triangle. I spent a lot of my time just working with one. So I was being paid directly by one. Now in my current role, we're getting paid by several dozen will pay us to help work with them. And so in my role, I'm kind of every day walking the halls on behalf of several different interests and really thinking about how to advance all of their interests all at once. Of course, not without conflicts, right? So no conflicts are allowed within our work, but we can have multiple interests that we represent. And that's really my current job in which I do. I was a lobbyist in the legislative houses for youth and government at YMCA. Love youth and government, and that's many folks probably went through youth and government. And I was a youth and government mentor last year, so welcome. I appreciate you doing that.
Oh, Nick, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you know you would always be a lobbyist, or did you have a different path before becoming a
Oh,
lobbyist?
great question. I can't tell you that I never thought I'd be sitting here and saying, I'm gonna be a lobbyist, right? And many times you don't even know what that is. And I'll be frank with you, right? Youth groups, like there's kind of at times kind of a bad connotation to that word, like the lobbyists are here, making the world worse. And that's something that when I went to undergrad, I went to the Claremont College, went to Pitzer College, a Cal grad student. Uh, I'm family of school teachers. So literally everyone from the youngest of 4 boys, they're all older brothers are teachers, mom's a public school teacher, dad, everyone in the family. And so you can do anything you want with your life, but you can't be a teacher, you gotta do something else to mix up Thanksgiving dinner. But growing up, I realized how much I really absorbed listening to them, all the parents calling our voicemail, kids who struggle. Everything brings that, we all bring that home, right? And I realized, well, let me go be an advocate for people. And then I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer because I didn't want to be in the courtroom. So what is it that I could do? So I went to go work for the state Senate. I worked there for about 5 years. And I met a lot of what I became lobbyists. So I thought, okay, well, there's definitely the oil lobbyists and the anti-climate change lobbyists, right? They're out there fighting, and we hear about them in Congress. But really, to be honest with you all, a majority, if not more, of lobbyists are walking in representing an interest like Create California or the environmental justice work, whether it's individual communities or individual cities or the whales or the otters. There's somebody who's a lobbyist for every single thing. The Bicycle Coalition. And I realized these are people who have dedicated their lives to literally waking up every morning and saying, I'm going to go convince 120 legislators that this is a good thing to do. Against a lot of money, against a lot of odds, always. And so that's kind of what I started to realize, okay, man, if I can get paid every day and have, take care of my family to wake up every day and be an advocate, let's go do that. And I think, under that moniker is the name lobbyist. And you can call yourself an advocate. Sometimes I'll say I'm a professional advocate. Lobbyist is just kind of the Webster dictionary term for that. But it's really being able to dedicate your life to it and be able to take care of your family at the same time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any burning questions? Anything? No.
Questions about the path, when I went to school, questions about where you are, what you can do, questions about anything. Ask away.
Actually, yeah. I wanted to know, like, as a student, what does effective lobbying and advocacy look like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the details. So, one is timing, right? So, I always say, some people say, don't yell, don't throw lobs and things. Well, I would say let's yell at the right time, right? It's important for this work specifically. You can do a protest and things like that. That's different stuff. But in terms of being effective at the systems change of lobbying capital, it's about timing, knowing when's the right time to really say my piece, right? When's the right day of the week? Me and Abe are always strategizing, right, when we meet. When's the right day to come to Sacramento? What's the right time to write that letter? What's the right time to send me to talk to the senator? So timing is one. Two is specifics. The legislators here all day long. There's a lot of noise in Sacramento. Everyone's talking at them, and they're saying, "Oh, the schools are bad, and we need more arts." Well, Abe and I always talk about, like, okay, well, how do we add color and texture to that, right? How do we say not only the schools are bad, we need more arts, but we have a failure at the particular high school in your district, Senator. There's no theater, or the kids are actually doing dance class on the blacktop on this street, the one you grew up at, actually the elementary school you went to, right? So it's about doing intelligence work, but also giving them really detailed perspective of why you want them to do a certain thing, right? If you want to bring a new after school program to your community, why is it that? Because the kids are hanging out here and here and here, and that's not a good thing for these reasons. So really give them the flavor and color of your life, and why you want them to make a different decision that they've made. Yeah.
Can I just jump in here really quick? Because that framework, I just want to connect to the work that the Student Voices leaders are doing. It's a direct one-to-one, right? everything that Nick just said in terms of connecting with senators and legislators also connects to school board members, to superintendents, right? That's why it's so important that they hear directly from you and your lived experience in those spaces, because you like, not that not a direct connection. You are the color, right? You are bringing the color to those stories. You're bringing your reality to those stories so that they connect the issues that are important to you, to the communities, so that they are compelled to make those changes. So it works at a state level and it also works at a local level. And I just want to make sure that those connections are happening.
It's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? They might not all listen. And that's why the beauty of our system is you realize they didn't listen, that they didn't have an open heart, that they really actually ignored the reality of your own reality, your own lived experience. Well, that's what November of 2024 is about, right? And that's where that's when we really talk about it. And that's where you become part of the multiple systems of change on this.
I'm wondering of a system, like, has our system always included lobbyists? Is there a world in which representatives are hearing from constituents that don't require the power of the lobbyists to like really push that issue forward? Like, what is that a possibility? What does that look like? It is not, I mean, in our current structural, I understand, but I'm curious as to,
I
yeah.
could actually try to answer that. And Nick, if you could back me up in terms of why I need Nick. Nick is in Sacramento every day, walking the halls and building relationships, and has a depth of knowledge that I do not have the capacity or the time to build. And so it is almost like he's like the expert. And I rely on him to let me know what are the legislators talking about? What are their priorities? What are their challenges? What are the bills that haven't been introduced, but people are kind of talking about? Does this idea, will this carry water? And also, who do I talk to? I cannot do that because one, I'm not in Sacramento, nor do I have the depth of knowledge of that. So I would say you can, but it is that expertise why we have and why we need a lobbyist there.
Why do you think so often people don't initially think to go to lobbyists to help have their voices heard, and why there's sometimes a gap between a lobbyist and the public will and goals?
Wow, that's a fantastic, all great questions. My head is spinning because I love to engage, and I feel like if you'll have me, Ava, I'll love to do another hour here. I think a couple of things. One is to Caitlin's question. It is possible, right? I think a lot of that work is in real people organizing, elevating issues to the point where a legislature must listen, right? They have to think about how to get this done. And the lobbyists are not necessarily like ingrained in the system, other than the fact that when we think about the drumbeat of that's necessary for change, is you start to really you're building up your people power, and then how do you have the same way someone gets to the point where they need to hire a lawyer to write a contract, right? Contracts don't write the contracts like a labor contract. They don't build themselves. It's the people power that are making that happen. And when it comes to write that contract, you bring in a lawyer, right? And so I don't see them as siloed systems. I really see them as systems that you start to use the lobbyists to amplify what you're doing. Just in terms of the disconnect, I mean, I'll be honest with you, right? It's like I said, I grew up maybe a way a lot of you have. I mean, I didn't know a lobbyist. I'm the first. I guess I'm the first lobbyist in my family. Actually, the first lobbyist that pretty much everyone I know knows. And they think I'm a lawyer, so or that I work for the president, so they don't really even know what I do. And so, I think it has been something that hasn't. It's not the most equitable profession, right? It's not a profession that many people have access. Some of the work we do in Sacramento is to make more awareness of what we do and more BIPOC lobbyists, because our communities need lobbyists. and lobbyists that look like us, or lobbyists that know us. And so that, frankly, I think that's the honest truth. It's like, how many doctors, MDs are actually in our families? How many doctors do we actually know that are not just our own doctors? And I think this is another area of profession, which I hope all of you think about, as a way to kind of break that ceiling, that glass ceiling, break into, like Abe said, there's not that many people who are walking the halls of the Capitol every day, that haven't come from a certain type of background, a certain type of wealth, grown up multi-generational. That's just the honest truth of it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with the Create California and the arts side of lobbying?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm blessed to kind of fall into it a little bit. But it's something that I really wanted to do, and I'll tell you why. So when I was looking at again how to making the jump to this career, right? And so again, I told you I was representing all 482 California cities. I was actually doing tax law and budgets, representing one single interest. And I said to myself, well, I really want to do more. I want to have more kind of impact, footprint on California politics and policy and change. Where can I go work that helps me do that? Then I met, maybe some of you met Veronica Villalobos Cruz, who was working as your lobbyist for many years. And I met her and I asked her, what can I do what can I do? Can I come work for you? This is something, an idol of mine who, a Latina who is a trailblazer in lobbying field. And she said, come work for us. Right. And we looked at all the clients that we have. And I said, well, I really, I have a passion for music. My brother's an artist in Los Angeles. And this is why I'm doing this work, so I can amplify your work. And so I was just like, I got introduced to Abe and I was like, please let me have Create California in my portfolio. Because I really love the work, and I think it's passion driven. It's got a mission that I really align with. And again, that's a little rare as well, right? I mean, you'll start to have jobs and realize, not everything you do you love. It's the work. But this one with Create California, I begged for it because so aligned with who I am and what I want to do. And then on top of that, I get paid to lobby. That's a dream job for me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just recognizing there's about 9 minutes. If
Yeah.
there is one more question, I'm happy to give that a beat. You want to think about that or pop it in the chat or bring it to the table. Otherwise, we do have the chunk, Abe
I
and
could be
Nick.
super fast.
Okay.
I think Nick and I could bust this out, and this could be a good kind of a continuation on the conversation of how we work together. And we want to provide an example. Next slide, please, of how we work together. This is a very live example, and this is just so you all know how we're working together. And so, and Nick, am I missing anything? We could alley-oop, however this works for you.
Absolutely.
So Bill was on our radar, on his radar, comes to me and he says, "Hey, this was last summer. There are 2 bills that are competing for the ballot. These are specific to education facilities. This bill would put a bond measure on the ballot." And let's look at it, let's understand. So he gives me some draft language of the bill, and instantly recognize like arts are not in this bill. And if arts, it just another thing is important. If sometimes if arts or something is not specific in a bill, there is a question if it's allowed. And so we got to work and we met with some staffers who are working on this bill and say like, hey, you all should include the arts in these bills. Next slide, please. And so he this was, I kind of got ahead of myself. So he brought this to my attention. This is a real document. This is something that he gives me and he says, hey, these are the bills that we're watching that are related to education or related to arts. We review them together. I review them. and then identify that particular bill. And so the ed facilities bill was on my radar, and then we know what we want to advocate. So we know we want to include arts facilities. Next slide. And so we talked to the folks, told them, hey, what would it look like? We're not asking for a carve out. We literally just want to clarify that they can use it. And this is how we want it to be amended. Next slide. And so we have a call to action. We sent out a coalition letter 2 weeks ago, a week ago. I just gave it to you, Nick. Did you get it? Okay,
Got
cool.
it.
So we sent this out to our advocates. It's a letter saying this is what the bill is. This is what we're asking for. Include VAPA facilities. Made the case. Kids are doing dance on blacktops. Prop 28 money is coming online. That is only for staff and equipment. Does not allow it to be used for facilities. This is a moment we want to make sure that the arts are called out. So we have a coalition letter. And also, this will be part of our legislative agenda for Arts Advocacy Day. So next month, we're going to be in Sacramento, and we're going to give our folks some money. It's a piece of paper that outlines it and says, when you talk to your legislator, bring this up and advocate for it. Next slide, please. And I'll leave those into you, Nick. And then there's the legislative process, which is also called the sausage making, which is behind the scenes stuff.
Well, man, it'd be, if a letter was all it took to change someone's mind, I think we'd be in a better world. And so what Abe is talking about is, we did a lot of technical work, reading language, reading legislation, understanding what opportunities are. And that's something as you become a professional in this space, you become just better at it over time. And now it's like, okay, we're organized. We've got the arts world ready to fight for funding and the education bond. And by the way, the education bond might be like $10 billion for new schools, for new facilities, for visual and performing arts facilities. So it's a big deal, and they only happen every decade or more, right? And so it's a big opportunity for us. And so now we're gonna get into the details. So what comes next? Or what committees is the bill going to? Which legislators sit on that committee, and who do we need to talk to? And so we're going to use our advocacy day to kind of really drive home our message, build champions from legislators and staff and experts, talk to other lobbyists who represent other interests, and get them on our side. So really start to work this kind of gears of really start to activate everything we can and everyone we can to say that the ed bond, the education facilities bond, should include the arts. And that's a life's work to do.
And bring it to an earlier point you made, Nick. And we have to find the stories, and we're going to find the stories, and we're going to connect our advocates to share their stories, and we're going to prepare them to, when they meet with their legislator, they have a story of the need for new arts ed facilities.
Yeah, the stories, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
And the
I'll
data.
tell you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about the arts, right? It's the teachers. You can imagine the teachers want new facilities, and the folks who do the grounds, they want new facilities. Of course, the sports teams want new facilities. So everyone's sort of working toward this goal, and it's about making sure that what we represent is heard, and understood, and included. And so that's why it's a whole activation. And I think you're all part of that by our youth, and making sure that you're engaged in these wheels of change here. So
Yeah, I'm looking
Caleb.
at time. Let's go to the next slide. So
Yeah,
ideally,
goal.
that's the goal, that he signs the bill, and it includes VAPA facilities, and that's clarified. So next slide. Okay, kick it off to you all. I know, not a lot of time. I apologize.
We'll make it quick. All right. So what you can do, next slide. Public will, we talked about this, the shifting of ideas and values and wishes. For example, like the anti-tobacco campaigns, the shift towards more equal access to arts education. Next slide.
Contacting leaders. Currently in the Youth Advisory Committee, we are working on a letter that we are going to send to our various school districts. So that's an option. Next slide.
This is when we mobilize, we get together with other like-minded individuals who want to make that shift happen, and it's a plan that we do. You could do this through clubs, you can do this through like what we're doing here together, writing letters. Okay, next.
Joining advocacy groups. I think we all have a head start in this, seeing that we're all here today. But yeah, honestly, this is a great way. I have personal experience with this with my local congresswoman. It's a great way to get your voice heard. If you have something that's like extremely important in your community and you think that change needs to be done, it's a great way to get involved, joining youth advisory councils. And a lot of our local political leaders actually have some. If you just search up your like local congressperson, most of the time they have these like youth advisory councils. So yeah.
And fundraising, that's the part where we now execute raising money to then, I used the word too soon, execute the plan of getting our wishes and our desires and that shift in the community. And you can do that through bake sales, car washes, raffles, talent shows. There's all sorts of ways to raise money for your goals and your dreams. Let's go. Let's go.
Thanks,
I just-
Deja. Thanks, Naomi. Before we, I know just like running up against time here. Before we, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen really quickly. Before I come back to that last slide really quickly to remind you about the next, your next session. Any last minute questions or thanks in the chat that you'd like to give Nick and Abe for being here? Feel free to come off mute or place those in the chat.
Nick, thank you for being my first lobbyist. I'm so honored. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I
That's
came in-
awesome. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I appreciate you saying that. That's and I say this saying you know, if you want to reach out to me, please do. I'm happy to help you and as you move forward as advocates and yeah, just let me know. I'm available and open to you.
Same here.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Abe. And thanks, everyone, and Naomi and Deja for so eloquently and gracefully facilitating this session and just really overall killing it. As y'all saw, April 23rd is our next session together. Both SBL and YAC folks will be there. That's going to be led by Alyssa, and she's going to be walking us through really 101 on fundraising. And we need money so we can pay our lobbyists. So y'all need to be there to find out how to make this money and how to make it happen. But thanks everyone so much for being here. Thanks Adelaide for joining us
Thank
as
you.
well.